Welcome to Hail Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hail Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Great to have you in. Back at you on a Wednesday. It's Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel is back in. Good to have him here. Loaded up and a busy show. Plenty of college football. Some thoughts on the Nebraska offense. More to add to the quarterback competition, and you're welcome to join us. Dial us up, 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865 numbers to get in. Find us on Twitter. Give us a follow at Schmidt_radio. Chris Schmidt at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. And can email Chris at HailVarsity.com. So the impossible has happened. And I love this. The Hail Varsity show has always been on Apple Podcast, but it is now on Spotify podcast platforms. It is on Google Play. And that's big time, man, with Hurrdat Sports Media. I'm excited for that it's going to be a part of the great entree of incredible podcast over at Hurrdat. We're excited. I told you it happened, and of all the crap that's happened in 2020, I kept hope alive that the podcast would someday be on the Spotify platform, and that has happened.
How many times did I say it was in the works?
You told me it was in
Should have never doubted me.
Dude, I didn't doubt you, but it was more of the blow-off answer. And you weren't lying. You weren't wrong to say, it's in the works. It's done.
It's on Spotify.
Yes.
I'm so excited. I mean, this has been something, I even said it last week whenever I was in here. It's like, I'm working on it. I'm getting Spotify
goals.
Up.
Graduate with honors. Enjoy my time. Spotify podcast. I mean, it's right there.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, we talk about team goals because that's probably been written out on a whiteboard somewhere at Memorial Stadium. Team goals, win the West, compete for a Big Ten championship, go bowling. The NCAA coming through with that one earlier today, officially, that every team's eligible to go bowling. That's now in ink, drying by the NCAA. So let's get you the lineup. We'll talk with Mike Babcock from HailVarsity.com and magazine. Babber's your authority on all things Nebraska. So Babber's with us in about 15. Mr. Mike Babcock. Shuey is with us. Mike Schuhart, Wilderness Ridge Golf. And you have today that's phenomenal golf weather. And you have Saturday that's supposed to be in the 70s. And that is awesome. I hope to get out and swing the clubs on Saturday. We are at Wilderness Ridge on Friday. Live show, me and Shuey. Poor Elijah will be duct taped back here in the studio. But we are live 4 to 6, happy hour with Hail Varsity. We want to see you out on the deck. They have heaters, they have TVs, they have cocktails, they have social distancing. So come enjoy a beautiful fall. And the scenery, right, on top of a lush golf setup. They've got trees that are just popping color right now. So come see us Friday out at Wilderness Ridge. Shuey in 30 minutes. Brad Edwards, ESPN College Football Insider. And then Jacob Padilla from Hail Varsity going to get us rolling in hour 2. Get his take on the quarterback breakdown. He has looked at that, has a really nice story up on HailVarsity.com. And also with practice underway today with the mayor and Nebraska basketball, let's get Jacob's 411 on, what are some possibilities for Hoiberg and this basketball team. I'm super excited about that. I saw Doc, good old Doc, doing the McDonald's Larry Bird, Michael Jordan tribute on social media where I don't know where he was positioned. I think the second level of the practice facility where he chucked a shot, it bounced, and then went in. So Doc already won in a horse this week.
Does he have any college eligibility left?
I don't know.
That could be a fun one to pull out during a game sometimes. Pull up in the crowd.
Doc used to live around the corner from us before he left Nebraska. I love Doc. He's always come on when we'd reach out, and I had a different dog then, but I'd always walk Sam the Labradoodle around the block a few times when I used to walk my dogs. And and I have two that I hate some days. But Sam would always pee in Doc's yard. And once in a while, Doc would be pulling in or out on his front stoop, and he was so kind. Shoe on the other foot. If I had someone's dog peeing in my yard all the time, I may throw something at somebody. But he was cool. So Doc's awesome. And maybe he didn't notice this white fur ball. At least it was just pee. Let's get into the offense and talk a little bit here about Nebraska. And again, read Dr. Petey, Derek Peterson's story. And to his point, and he asked this yesterday to Coach Frost, I mean, it's been an offensive explosion. Here's what I think. I think your offenses are that high-flying. I think your offenses are that deadly. I think they're that good in space with skill guys. And look at Pitts at Florida, right? The tight end. You see it in the NFL, right? With just matchup nightmares and the ball's getting out quick. There's perimeter blocking. And you have 7 yards before you can get off a block a lot of times because you're getting fast, high agility dudes in space. And you're forcing people to do one-on-one. Tackling is a nightmare in football because you have less contact. You've had less reps at it. You had this stupid pandemic that screwed your preseason and your spring for a lot of schools. I don't know how good Nebraska's defense is going to be, okay, but I think they're going to be more physical, and they've been working on tackling, okay? That's a lot of things you can take away from yesterday's Zoom meeting, but with Scott Frost, he is just putting his dudes through the ringer to get them ready for the Big Ten. And while Nebraska's amped up and gotten better physically, I mean, we're talking 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", 6'6", go up the line on the lines of scrimmage. I mean, Nebraska's got more of a Big Ten build and body on top of the conditioning with Coach Duvall. So that is in there. And Rick Pizzo nailed it. Now it's time to go execute. You've got the body type. You've got the conditioning. You're going to have some depth. Now go make some freaking plays, right? I mean, and it's okay. Nebraska fans been saying that, nodding their head about that off and on for the last 10 to 15 years. When it comes to offenses, I think Nebraska could have an advantage in any other league. I think the Big Ten, because of how rugged it is, Iowa hasn't forgotten how to tackle. Minnesota's been traditionally good at tackling. Penn State's pretty good, assuming their other studs don't opt out. Ohio State, I mean, that's who you get out of the gate, and their NFL secondary. They're NFL 11, right? I mean, they're supposed to just reload. So I look at that situation, and I don't know if Nebraska's offense isn't coming out of the gate because of who they play, scoring 40 or 50 points like you see it in the SEC. It's not time to lose your mind on the Nebraska offense. I just think it's a product of the league you're in. I think the defenses in the Big Ten will be a little bit better. I still think overall you're going to see a bit of an uptick in points produced. I think you're going to see a Frost offense not have a problem scoring some points. And it's progressively gotten better despite injuries, right, to the quarterback spot. And think if the quarterback spot gets done right. And what I mean by that is you have an injury-free, highly competent, and very confident player at quarterback in Adrian Martinez, or you mix in McCaffrey, or McCaffrey wins the job. I know these certainties. I think the offensive line's going to open holes, and I think Dedrick Mills is going to run the football. What do you get at quarterback to balance the offense out? And Elijah, what do you get at wide receiver, right? I mean, I'm glad Warner's doing what he's doing, and I think he can be big for whoever's throwing the football to him. And I think Warner can be big for blocking on the edge, right? I think you're going to have better edge blocking for Nebraska to do that bubble, right? So that'll be good. That'll be some yards, right? But I don't know as we zoom out, Wandale's nice. Okay. Alante Brown's supposed to be good. What do you get? Because this is the double-edged sword part of this with amping up the physicality and making this just a pretty treacherous build-up to kickoff. You got to go physical and you got to beat the hell out of one another, but you can't nick each other up, and that seems to be what's happening with some of the high-level athletes when we think of what Scott said yesterday about some of the guys at wide receiver being dinged. So we don't know where the wideouts will be. O-line, running game, question marks, quarterback, and it's not a negative that it's a question mark. It's just a question mark right now. And where the wide receiver's at. Think if it comes together, and let's talk about this out of 10. Say it hits 7 out of 10 times. With your receivers are stepping up, they're playing at a high level, your ground game and your O-line's good, you're injury free, and you're getting really good quarterback play. Nebraska, would it shock you if they're putting up 45 a game with everything being optimum? It wouldn't. It wouldn't. And even in the Big Ten, that may be a bit high of a ceiling, but maybe high 30s. And I think if you score in the mid to high 30s in the Big Ten, you should win most of your football games. That's just kind of how I feel. It doesn't matter when I look at Nebraska's schedule or not. Your defense just has to be a little bit better on third down and a lot better stopping the run.
See, a question that we discussed a lot in the months leading up to the football season was who's going to be dominating come week 1? Is it going to be the offense or is it going to be the defense?
I think it's got to be offenses.
Look at the SEC right now. It feels like, especially in the SEC West, you got to put up 40 points if you want to win a game.
Bama's allowing 30 a game. Mm-hmm. LSU and Bobo's allowing 32 a game. And Florida's allowing 33. And meanwhile, Lane Kiffin's scoring half 100 and he's 1-2.
Yeah, it feels like you got to put up at least a 40 spot in the SEC, and then you look at the Big 12, and it's even higher. You got to put up a 45 spot.
Dude,
50.
You may score 60 points and win in overtime. Look at Texas and Texas Tech.
So my question is when you're looking at this Husker football season, what's the number that you're putting on it that the offense has to score to give them a chance in every single game? I'm looking right around that.
They got to score 35 to 38 points.
That's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at 35 to 40 range. If the offense isn't putting up points in that range, it's going to be tough to win a game.
Do we sound drunk by saying, well, the offense got to go get 5 touchdowns? I mean that seems so exorbitant, but it's not in today's college football, at least not to the start of 2020.
Exactly. 35 to 40 for Big Ten normally, yeah, it seems ridiculous. But for college football 2020, it's even on the low end of things. Pac-12, you got to go put up 40. Big 12, you got to put up 40. Feels like SEC, you got to put up 40.
I'll say this, man. When's the last time somebody not named Ohio State put up back-to-back weeks of 40 against Iowa and Wisconsin? I'm sorry, I'm just asking out loud. When has that happened? Maybe 2014 for Iowa, their 4-8 season. Maybe when Wisconsin went 8-5, the year after they went 13-1. But I don't think it was a defense. It was their offense scoring 10 to 13 points. Where your defense is out on the field all the time. We haven't even gotten into, Harbaugh is known as a pretty good offensive coach. Michigan's still looming out there. Indiana, I mean, they can score a lot of points. Mm-hmm. But you've got Ohio State, right? You've got Penn State, and then you have your Iowa and your Wisconsins. Those are your kind of cream. And then you have Nebraska trying to surge up. Okay, and Minnesota was really good last year with an 11-2, so I don't want to discount them either. But I look at Indiana-Nebraska's game last year where that thing was just a shootout, and it was entertaining, but I mean it was tough for Nebraska because they came out on the short end of the stick. They started out explosively. So, optimum-wise, what's realistic for the Nebraska offense? What can they put up? What's an expectation you have? And mid to upper 30s, is that too outlandish? You might say no because of how college football's rolling right now in 2020. You might say yes because the Big Ten is just a better league theoretically, defensively. can join us at 466-3776, 466-3776, 800-825-5865. Can also find us via email, Chris at HailVarsity.com. The Twitter handle at Schmidt_radio, Chris Schmidt, and at Herbal Essence for Elijah Herbel. We'll talk about this with Mike Babcock here very shortly. Also interested to get Babber's take on not only Coach Frost, but just the quarterback room and how you should go about handling this when it comes to the quarterback, when it comes to if and how many snaps Luke McCaffrey gets. Does he win the job? What's the likelihood he wins the job? And color me shocked that it is as close as it sounds from the head coach. And it's not that I don't think Luke McCaffrey is a really good football player or has the ability to go win the job. I just thought Adrian is your guy, and he still may be your guy in Columbus to start things off. But it comes down to maybe losing the job or injury. How fearless can he play? And the thing you got to ask yourself, too, I mean, what will set things apart in this offense is how quick of a blinker you are, and you've heard it time and time again, but what can you do as a runner in this offense? Can you run pretty fearlessly? Mike Babcock's next.
And we're back
Fellas, think we could listen to the radio
on Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery.
Yes! That's awesome!
I'm trying to work Jill St. James into sitting down here and chatting with me and Mike Babcock, and she's just like, no, this is water, just before you accuse me of anything. Elijah Herbel's in. News coming out on Pinnacle Bank Arena. The watch party for Nebraska-Ohio State will not be held at Pinnacle Bank Arena. Journal-Star, make that World Herald just reporting that Pinnacle Bank Arena will not be hosting the watch party on October 24th. That was supposed to be an 11 o'clock kick. Tom Lorenz, GM for the arena, today notified officials with the city of Lincoln and Lancaster County Health Departments that officials had changed their plans. You've got the COVID pandemic. It's unpredictable. You've got such a high number of cases and hospitalizations. So PBA is reconsidering the event. And, you know, God love you if you were going to go there and do that. Not judging at all. Go watch football, support Nebraska, do your thing. And I have no doubt PBA would have handled this very well when it comes to safety and health and spacing. Outdoors is where I will be. We welcome in Mike Babcock, historian, author, and Hall of Famer with Hail Varsity, 40 years plus of Nebraska excellence at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, how many points a game for Nebraska's offense? What do you think? we don't even know the quarterback yet, brother, but let's just start throwing numbers out.
Well, now, wait a minute. We do know the quarterback. It's Adrian Martinez.
Okay.
Gee, Merry Christmas. I have no comment. How about that?
At least you didn't hang the phone up on me.
I've watched these games, and to predict something relative to this college football season is madness, I think. I mean, it just you just don't know what's going to happen. We've seen upsets. We've seen, I guess Alabama and Clemson have hung in there, but they've had to score some points in some situations. So, I just don't know what to expect. I think that to put it in the context, I think it's a good thing that Nebraska is opening with Ohio State, because I think you want to start the season with the best, because you don't know. First of all, you don't know how far into the season you're going to get. I assume you're going to get all the way, but I take nothing for granted. I see 2 SEC games. One is for sure postponed, and the other one is in jeopardy. You just don't know week to week what the situation is going to be. So I think it's probably good that Nebraska's playing Ohio State right off the bat. I think Nebraska's been doing things the right way. I think Nebraska will be prepared to play the game, and that's all you can ask. But how many points a game is Nebraska going to score? We'll go game by game on that. We'll see after the first game. We'll see.
I'm just curious about it because they under the Frost offense, you had a really good outing the last time you were in Columbus, right? Mm-hmm. And not so much when you were in Memorial Stadium. And I think the option and the opportunities there with your run game and your line, again, in the uncertainty that is 2020, you got to feel good about that for Nebraska because of the experience and the talent you got there. When I brought up the quarterback spot, I know Adrian's the returning starter. This thing seems pretty tight, Mike, with Adrian and McCaffrey, and let's go there. And, you've seen a lot of quarterback battles over the years at Nebraska. What's your read on this here based on what Scott did on Zoom yesterday here? What are you thinking? Any tea leaves you're reading through, or are you just kind of letting this thing play out? And you know what? It'll be good for Nebraska either way.
Well, I'm going to preface this by saying that my opinion is probably in the minority on this, and I do think that there's competition for the job. I think the competition is intended to make everybody better. I don't dismiss that possibility. But one of the things, not only ability and experience are taken into consideration, but also the confidence of the coach. And my experience has been over the years watching the way the coaches at Nebraska have handled this thing, and particularly the time I watched Tom Osborne deal with things like this. Adrian Martinez has earned the job, and it's his to lose, and it's his to lose in a game. Mm. Okay, so at this point, yeah, there's competition in practice. There's no question about that. And if it was clear, just absolutely clear that Luke McCaffrey was the better choice, he'd be the guy out there. But in listening to what Scott Frost said, and I think that a coach is going to be guarded in any kind of question like that. I don't think that it's clear-cut that he's a better quarterback than Adrian Martinez, or that he's shown better. There are things that he's still learning. So Adrian is the guy. He's the guy that earned the job. It's his job to lose on the field in a game, and that, to me, that's the bottom line. So if there are opportunities to get Luke McCaffrey on the field, maybe you got two quarterbacks in there, like they've done, or something like that. Yeah, he's going to get on the field, and could he be a starter? Yeah, no question. In another context, I think he could be, but it's Adrian's job to lose. That's my opinion. Again, I preface that with I think that's a minority opinion on things, but I think that you have to have. That's the other component is you have to have the confidence of your coach in order to be successful. In addition to all these other things, and I think that Adrian has earned that because of his experience, and until he shows otherwise on the field in a game, that's the way it's going to be.
Mike Babcock is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Mike, what I'm hearing here is you're confident that Adrian's going to be the guy come week one. But when you look at a full season of 9 games, I know it's hard to say now, but do you think that Adrian will be the guy for all 9 of those games? Or do you think that we could see an injury, meaning Luke McCaffrey come in, or bad performance from Adrian, meaning Luke would come in?
Well, like I said at the beginning here, and I'm going to quote so I covered the Champaign Central High School beat for about 3 years when I was working for the Champaign, for a paper in Champaign, Urbana, Illinois. I covered every game, whatever. And the first thing I asked the coach, first time I met him, I remember something about with the upcoming game, and he said, after the game, ask me, and then I'll know and you'll know.
Talk to me later.
Yeah, which is a great answer. It's like, okay, well, thanks for that. But that's what I'm saying. After the first game, ask me that question, and we'll have a better idea of it, because I just don't know from week to week. All I know is going into that first game, Adrian is the guy. And, do I think that Luke McCaffrey has the talent? There is no question about that. Speed, the whole bit. But again, it's a job that has to be earned. And Scott Frost played for Tom Osborne, and that's the way Tom did things. I mean, take the example, and I'm an old guy. I'm going back in time now, but take the example of Brooke Behringer came off the bench in '94 and led Nebraska to the Big 8 championship when Tommy had the blood clot problem, and he stepped in and he had the job, but it was Tommy's job ultimately to lose, and when Tommy was finally healthy, ultimately that was his job, and that's where things stood. I mean, it's difficult to. I'm not explaining myself very well, but that component of knowing that the coach has confidence in you that comes from your having earned the job initially is an important component, I think, of success at that all-important position.
Mike Babcock's with us, Hail Varsity Magazine, HailVarsity.com, at MD Babs on Twitter. We're talking the quarterback spot. Last thought here, Babbers, a couple of minutes before we got to jump out, but with Scott and his background as a quarterback and dealing with the Frankie London situation and how that's kind of shaped him, do you have any doubt that he'll be able to navigate this? Because someone's got to start, and I think both kids are great kids, so I think they'll be good teammates. But there is disappointment if someone doesn't win a job.
Oh, no question about that. And I think that, Scott will do a great job. What happens in that quarterback's room with Coach Verduzco and then what Scott Frost adds to it is it's all positive. I mean, Logan Smothers is in the conversation. The kid from Kearney, the walk-on player, he's in the conversation in the competition because all those kids are getting better, and that's what you have to have. But, I have no question that Scott knows that part of it. I mean, he had the experience. He dealt with a lot, not just on the field, but the fact that he, from the fans, the fact that he went to Stanford first and came back. A lot of fans took a long time to accept him, and some of them didn't accept him until he made that impassioned plea after the bowl game that Nebraska deserved a national championship. That he got him there, but Frankie London, that was great. Central Florida, so Scott gets booed because Frankie comes in predetermined, that Tom said it would happen, and maybe Scott will do that. Maybe he'll have a predetermined series in the first half where he puts Luke McCaffrey in. What happened? That's the way Tom did things.
I'm interested to see it shake out, and if I'm Ohio State, look, I got to prepare for a couple of guys, and I know, but I think your take is so smart on Adrian and how he's not the quarterback. I mean, and that's just well thought out, man. Babbers, what's coming up in the magazine? I've got about 45 seconds. I know the new issue's off to the printer.
Yeah, well, we got some football because there's real football.
Thankfully.
Brandon did an extensive sort of look at things, football getting ready, and we got part 2 of the series on the 70 national championship season 50 years ago, first one, and a lot of good football in there. There's a little bit of basketball. We're moving. You didn't expect football to be here, but it is.
I can't wait for it. Mike Babcock with us, Hail Varsity Magazine, HailVarsity.com, at MD Babs on Twitter. Babbers, a lot of fun. We'll check in next week. Thanks so much for your time.
Hey, be safe. Thanks.
All right, good to hear from Mike Babcock. We'll head out to Wilderness, a little golf thought, and Shuey will throw in some football. Hail Varsity continues.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for spending time. Hail Varsity, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Brad Edwards, ESPN Insider. 25 minutes away, we'll say hi to Jacob Padilla, some hoops and football thoughts on the Big Red. Mike Schuhart right now is smiling because it's just fabulous weather out at Wilderness Ridge. Wilderness Ridge Golf is where you find Shuey. We're there Friday for Happy Hour with Hail Varsity, another live show. Friday out there on the deck, they've got heaters. It's going to be about 60 and gorgeous. Come see us 4 to 6. Shuey is riding shotgun. Shuey, how's your day, man?
It's awesome, man. Can't beat this. Sun's out, and temperature's up. I don't even know what month is this. Sure doesn't feel like October.
It is.
It's more like June.
Yeah, and we're midway home, and you've got the perfect weather. You have the perfect, paintings on all those trees out there with the colors.
Oh, yeah.
And your greens are still giving people the middle finger, and that's a compliment because I played them on Saturday, and let's just say the tee shot was good, the putting was not. I should have just kept my blindfold on, Shuey.
Yeah, our greens got a little speed to them, man. They're beautiful. Rolling fast, rolling true. You better know what you're doing.
Well, that's the problem. I got to see you. I got to come see you more to help out with that putter. But let's dive in. I want to go football first with you. And Babbers had no idea with how many points a game for the Nebraska offense. Give me a number, Shuey. That's where we're going today. Let's predict the points per game. It's weird because the Big Ten's going to be supposed to be better defensively, but, I mean, hell, Bama's allowing 30 a game, right? So what do you think the Frost offense can put up?
Man, I'm in the mid to high 30s.
All right, good. So we're all uniform here. I like it.
Yeah, because it sure seems like the offenses are way better than the defenses so far in what we're seeing. So offenses are putting up some serious points, and the defenses can't seem to stop them. So, and I think our offense has got some weapons that are going to be pretty good.
I think you're right. Now, do you have a thought on the quarterback competition?
Well, I think it sounds like it's very close.
Mm-hmm.
So I think both guys will play quite a bit this year, actually. Because it sounds like they're not hesitant to pull one, put one in. So I think you're going to see both of them get some reps. I still think Martinez has a little bit of the upper hand.
Mm-hmm. No, I don't think you're off there. You got to go with experience, even though there's no one in the stands in Columbus.
Mike, I know it's reasonable to think Adrian's going to be the starter, but who do you want to see walking out in the field for that first drive against Ohio State?
I would like to see him. I mean, just because of what you've seen in the past, what he can do. If he can put it all together, be pretty consistent with his athleticism and, what he can do, make plays on the ground, in the air. He's pretty fun when he's on to watch. He's pretty good.
Mike Schwartz with us, Wilderness Ridge Golf. Shuey is normal Wednesday spot here at 440, and he'll be riding shotgun with me Friday, 4 to 6, happy hour with Hail Varsity out at Wilderness on the deck.
Can't wait.
That's going to be so much fun. We won't need a tent either.
No, I don't think so.
Shuey's like, let's get a tent.
Last time.
Last time it was August 25th or 26th, and it was one of those 1,000%, dear God, let's not have 2-a-day August days, right?
Exactly.
We lost to 40 pounds sweating it out, but it was awesome. It had so much fun, and so many folks came out. It was awesome, and we want to see you again. And the deck is the way to be with Wilderness. So we've got a month here from the Masters, and between the climate, the time. Let's dive in a little bit before we talk about Vegas this weekend. And, how are guys, I guess, trying to go about getting ready for Augusta? And it's going to be a different Augusta here in a month.
Yeah, I mean, everything is so screwed up on how their scheduling is and what they typically do to get ready for those tournaments, because used to it being the first tournament, now it's the last tournament throughout the season. So it's like they're trying to maintain some sense of normalcy and how they would prepare for all of their majors. It's just they're kind of in a different order, but and it's not easy to do because it's so late in the year and so different. I mean, guys are used to shutting things down by now, and they still got one of the, if not the biggest tournament of the year still to play. So, it's like they played a long season, and how do you stay not so much motivated, but just you keep your energy up to be able to have it ready for that tournament. So it's going to be interesting.
Shuey, what was your routine like as you got ready? And I ask this because I look at DeChambeau. He's taken a month off before the Masters, and folks got to know their body. They got to know the mileage you put on. That said, you need to keep playing. And so what was your routine like, and are you surprised Bryson's stepping away the month before Augusta?
I always do, because I was a little the opposite. I felt like I needed to keep playing and playing and playing and playing and playing and playing. So I played constantly all the time. I didn't take very many weeks off, for a couple of reasons. I wanted to stay sharp. Mm-hmm. I wanted to keep working on my skills, doing what I'm doing. And you never know when you're going to have that week where everything kind of falls together. And I want to be playing in a tournament when that happens, So I just never was very comfortable taking a week or 2, 3 weeks off and feeling sharp enough, even though I probably was. It just mentally I didn't feel like I was sharp enough because I hadn't been in the competition, competing all the time, staying mentally in that frame. So I was one that wanted to play all the time, But there's a lot of guys that just they take 2 or 3 weeks off, recharge their batteries, get their body back 100%, so they feel very comfortable, strong, mentally, physically, and they're ready to go. So I was not one of those guys. I like to play every week.
Mike, about 90 seconds left here, and it's obviously beautiful golfing weather in Lincoln right now and this weekend, but it's going to be even more beautiful down in Las Vegas this weekend. Highs around 90 degrees all weekend for the CJ Cup. Do you know anything about the golf course they're playing at down there, Shadow Creek?
I don't. I know just a little bit about it. It's a pretty unique golf course. I'm kind of surprised they are playing there because that was a golf course that was designed with a lot of different characteristics of some of the most famous holes around the world on it. So it's going to be really neat to be able to see it, because it's not very easy to get on that golf course to be able to even play it. So it's going to be fascinating to kind of see the golf course. I think people will be very intrigued by it. And I'll be intrigued to see what guys kind of shoot on that golf course. It should be very challenging.
Give me a win place show real quick.
Man, I don't know. Bryson's obviously not playing. Mm-hmm. He's on top of his game right now. So you're going to see, again, I keep going to some of these young guys. Matthew Wolff, I think, Victor Hovland, Abraham Anser, Joaquin Neiman, some of these guys that haven't shut it down. Are continuing to play. And they've been playing really well, Terrell Hatton's another guy. So if Terrell's playing, I know he just won overseas. So if he plays, he's a really good choice. But Matthew Wolff, man, he's been on a roll.
He's been good. Mike Schuart. Shuey, we will see you Friday, brother. Can't wait to be out at Wilderness, bud. Thanks for the time today.
I know. Can't wait to be on the deck. Doesn't get any better.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Well, the game of the weekend, Georgia-Alabama. We'll see how that goes. You have a statement here by Alabama. This from Bruce Feldman, just out 2 minutes ago. Early this afternoon, there was notification given that Coach Nick Saban and Athletic Director Greg Byrne tested positive for COVID-19. Both immediately left the facility and went to their home to self-isolate after receiving that information. So we will talk with Brad Edwards in 10 minutes about Bama, because you know that LSU and Florida, he had a couple of walk-ons, a couple of staff members, and 18 players from Florida test positive. Now, how did they get it? And I'm not blaming, I'm just wondering how they got it. Did somebody breathe on them wrong with people in the stands? Were you out kicking it at a club afterwards? Which college kids will do. Or, God forbid, someone made a tackle on you and you caught COVID. I know this, that Saban was more masked up against Ole Miss. And Ole Miss has had some COVID cases as well. So That's the latest. We'll talk with Brad Edwards, ESPN insider, Bama graduate, about Saban and athletic director Greg Byrne. That's son of former Nebraska athletic director Bill Byrne. So who knows if they postpone Georgia and Alabama. That was supposed to be a 7 o'clock deal. Does Saban get on Zoom from his office and scream at people in the booth? I'm kind of kidding, but not really. Because if he's got to go isolate, that's not going to allow him on headset. I don't think you got to punt the game if he can't be there, but you need to rapidly test everybody he's been around. Real quick, want to remind you about your friends at West Blue Realty. Are you moving in 2020? West Blue can help find that residential home in Lincoln or surrounding communities. They're excellent at that. When you mention Hale Varsity, West Blue Realty can provide you up to $1,000 on the closing of your next home purchase. Give Tom Luby a shout at 402-540-3768. Tom can help. Also, how about Kelly Hofschneider? Kelly does a great job at 402-202-2312. It pays to work with West Blue, westbluerealty.com. Go make an appointment today with Kelly. Go make an appointment today with Tom, 1120 K Street, Suite 200.
Quick note before we go, still on this Florida topic here, is that Florida, before their trip to Texas A&M, the root of the outbreak was because a couple players in the team had symptoms of COVID but thought that they were allergies and did not think they needed to report them.
So it's it's just seasonal allergies.
And then, boom, half your team is COVID. I shouldn't say half. That's no exaggeration.
No, I know what you're saying. But that's kind of a son of a bee, honestly, because you think it's just allergies. And you give it to your buddy because you coughed or you've had a sneeze session here or there. But, man, the other thing, though, too, is, I mean, look at all. Can you trace it? Where am I going to trace these guys getting it, that they thought it was allergies? Did you get it from fans in the stands? And I've been super pro fans in the stands, but I'd like to know. Give me some contact tracing info. Hour 2, Brad Edwards up next on Hale Varsity.
Welcome to Hale Varsity Radio, the voice of Husker Nation. Insight, opinion, expertise, with the biggest and best names talking Nebraska across the state. Join the show on Twitter at Hale Varsity and at Schmidt_radio. Call in at 402-466-ESPN or 1-800-825-5865. Here's Chris Schmidt.
Back with you, it's Hour 2. It's Hale Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Brad Edwards in just a moment. This from the World Herald, and our old friend Will Bauer reporting that the Nebraska track team has suspended practice amid a COVID-19 outbreak. This coming down about 5 minutes ago. And there was enough of an outbreak with COVID-19 for Nebraska track that Coach Gary Pepin confirmed it today, according to a source. Per Will Bauer's story, a number of athletes on the team tested positive this week. The team's roster includes more than 100 athletes. Pepin said he didn't know how many had tested positive, but it was enough to shut down practice until at least Monday, October 19th. And when it comes to contracting it, Pepin said the team's been working their fannies off to keep athletes as safe as possible, as has the athletic department. And the contraction of the virus has been in innocent situations unrelated to group gatherings or trips to downtown bars. It's not like they haven't been doing what they're supposed to have been doing, is what Pepin said. So we'll keep you updated. Kudos to Will Bauer for his story. We say hi to Brad Edwards, ESPN insider, college football, and college game day. Brad, COVID's the topic, man, and it's been just an insane 2020. I want to lead off with Saban and athletic director Byrne contracting and testing positive for the virus. Does this put the game Saturday against Georgia in jeopardy, in your opinion?
Yeah, look, it's you try to connect dots because the schools are only going to be willing to tell you so much.
Right.
Earlier this afternoon, at the same time as the Florida-LSU game was being announced as postponed, Lane Kiffin in his press conference said that Ole Miss is dealing with an outbreak on its roster. And I think that kind of got lost in the shuffle because a lot of people were following the bigger news. But I kind of look at that, and then I see this on Alabama, and I put the two together, and it's like, all right, you would think, regardless of whether their previous opponent from a few days ago had any COVID issues or not, you would think that if the head coach and the AD have it, there's a pretty good chance that at least someone else on that staff has it, and that probably some players have it as well. Doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but I would think, given what we know with the Ole Miss situation, that's also in play. So whether there's still a chance that the game could be postponed, I don't know. I'm sure we'll learn more tomorrow as far as what the numbers look like on the Alabama roster, but clearly having to take the field for a top 3 matchup without arguably the greatest coach of all time on your sideline, that changes things. Now, just getting back to the football aspect of it, Alabama does have 5 people on that staff who have previously been FBS head coaches, and so the early indication is that Steve Sarkisian will take over the acting head coach duties, and he will certainly have plenty of help from guys who've been there before.
And would you put it past Saban to somehow be able to zoom into somebody in the coach's box? I mean, I'm kind of serious. I'm kind of not.
Well, I don't know what types of restrictions there are on that kind of stuff, and whether that is outlawed. I'm sure. Look, if there's a loophole, Saban is going to find a way. So as long as there's a gray area, he'll get there in someone's ear. But it definitely will be weird. And I tell you what it does. It automatically creates an asterisk on this game if Alabama were to lose. Mm-hmm. Now, it might not matter because if Alabama and Georgia went out to the SEC championship game and rematch, we know that the second game, the one for the conference title, is going to mean more to the selection committee anyway. Mm-hmm. But it's certainly one of those that if Alabama were to lose this and it ends up being the only loss, I don't think that there's any question whatsoever that they're going to get a pass from the selection committee if they're having to play the game without Saban.
Brad Edwards with us on Hail Varsity Radio, college football insider, ESPN at @JBradEdwards on Twitter, and we're talking about Nick Saban and Greg Byrne testing positive for COVID. And last thought on this before we get into some offensive football talk with Ole Miss and their outbreak. Any knowledge as to the tracing of this? And Brad, to your knowledge, what's the testing setup like? Is it 3 times a week still in the SEC? And I look at Nebraska, and the reason I ask is Nebraska's, I just told you about the track team for Nebraska. Well, the football team's tested every day. So is this a situation where could somebody have contracted it from fans in the stands? Is it player to player on field? I mean, that's where I'm going with this. What do you know?
I've always assumed that this stuff would start off with, players just mingling with the regular student body,
right.
So, with the rest of the students. Now, once someone picks it up that way, though, then if they're not testing daily, then, it can affect all sorts of people before they find out about it, depending on exactly when in the week. Now, let's look at the Florida case, because I don't know enough about the Alabama one, because that one just came out within the last hour. But what we're told with Florida is that they had tested on Thursday and got the results back on Thursday night as far as, who was clear and everything to play against Texas A&M. They were, all go. I don't believe they had any positive test, and so everybody gets on the plane and they fly to College Station. They play that game. What the reporting this afternoon is that apparently there were some players who had some symptoms like sniffles and things like that, and they and this is a little bit of a leap. This is Twitter news, so let me just couch it with that. This is not at this point being reported by anyone an official story, that some of the players, but it's understandable. It makes sense. The players were reluctant to mention their symptoms because they didn't want to be held out of the game or sent back home or anything like that. I'm assuming they figured it was nothing, and they played. And most of them, I don't believe, showed any symptoms beyond that. And then all of a sudden, you have this major outbreak when they test again on Monday. Now, I believe someone said that Florida this week started the everyday testing.
Okay.
And that's kind of how they had caught this. I'm not sure if that's true, but certainly last week it appears that they weren't testing every day. So while that is a key to it, as you know, everything I've seen up to this point has indicated that the daily testing, the rapid result stuff, is not as reliable as the other type of testing. And so what the Big Ten is basically banking its season on. There's not a 100% success rate with it, and so I think that's a little bothersome. And the fact that the SEC has blown up the way that it has in the first 3 days this week, with 2 postponements and now this news about Saban, not to mention the news about Ole Miss, which to this point neither of those has resulted in a postponement. I think there was a lot of reason to be encouraged if you're the Big Ten when you looked at the SEC and you say, well, you know what, they started later. And they appear to have this under control, and now very clearly they don't. So it tells you that if the Big Ten doesn't have this under much better control than the other conferences do, their thresholds are not going to allow them to play games that some of these other schools have already played. So I'm starting to get worried about the Big Ten seeing this SEC news this week.
Brad, just looking specifically at this weekend of games, I mean, with Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and LSU, it was shaping up to be one of the better weekends of college football. At least that was my estimation as of a couple weeks ago. Would you say that this weekend has now been essentially ruined by COVID? Because, I mean, the 2 top games have been taken off the board.
Yeah, I mean, one taken off the board completely, and the other one at least compromised in some way. And who knows, that one can end up disappearing as well. Yeah, I mean, you could make that argument. Now, of course, before we knew anything about the COVID situations with these teams, the LSU Florida game was already had taken a serious hit because of both teams losing on Saturday. But at the same time, I think I might have been more looking forward to that game than I was before, but just because it figured to be like 50-50. I mean, like neither defense could stop the other one's offense, so it was going to be an exciting and entertaining game. But now it's not going to be played, and hopefully Alabama, Georgia will, because I don't know if you guys have looked at the schedule, but the Big 12 had already planned on this being a bye week for most of the conference, and with the Baylor Oklahoma State game being postponed, once again another COVID casualty. I'm using that term casualty in football terms, of course. It left one game, and that's Kansas. The Kansas-West Virginia game, that's the only Big 12 game this weekend. And so you've got a few, not very compelling games in the ACC, and so all that was left was the SEC from a Power 5 standpoint, and now we've, lost one of the better games in that conference, and hopefully not more, or otherwise, man, it's gonna be a rough Saturday.
Brad, a thought on offenses here, and I look at Bama allowing 30 points a game. I look at what Florida's allowing, LSU and Bo and Orgeron pretty much saying, look, I support you, Bo, but you got to simplify things, and that was Monday. That was the message. What's your take? Is it because offenses are just that high flying in 2020, or is this offensive point total coupled with people in space and bad tackling because of, less practice time due to COVID? Yeah. What do you make of the point totals?
I think there could be a little bit of it, where, normally you come into the season and coaches are always saying defense is ahead of the offense. Mm-hmm. And because it was so unconventional and there was no spring practice and, disjointed preseason practice for pretty much everybody, maybe that contributed a small amount, but I think most of what we're seeing is specifically related to the SEC, and that between two things, SEC has kind of had an offensive explosion. One is Tua. When Tua became the starter at Alabama, and they really opened up that offense. And then second was the Joe Brady, Joe Burrow combination at LSU last year, which resulted in arguably the greatest offense in the history of college football. And when they're going out there with a very talented quarterback and big-time receivers, and they're chucking it around on a high number of plays, and especially the rate that they passed on first down, it showed everybody in the country, really, but more the SEC teams that hadn't yet bought in, what you can do with an offense like that. And LSU late last season faced what I think were the two best defenses in college football, in Georgia in the SEC championship game and Clemson in the national championship, and neither one of them had a chance of stopping LSU. And I think that opened a lot of eyes, and I think there's just a lot of SEC programs that have changed their approach to offense and what it needs to be. And I don't know if the defenses will eventually catch up and adjust, but for now, they don't seem to have very many answers. And when you combine all the concepts with the tempo, you're just seeing guys just out of position all the time. And to me, it's not really the points as much that resembles what we have been seeing in the Big 12 in recent years. It's the fact that there's so many receivers that are running wide open against defenses that didn't account for these players somehow. And that used to be a very Big 12 thing, and now you see it, even in the SEC.
Brad Edwards is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Brad, that scoring explosion, do you think it will extend into the slate of Big Ten games that we got next weekend?
It could. Now, of course, you don't have a lot of the big-time matchups in Week 1 in the Big Ten that you would expect to be back and forth. Most of them appear to be relatively one-sided on paper, where you'd think there's going to be a lot more scoring coming from one team than the other. But, I was actually looking at some numbers today, and just the increase of high-scoring games in the SEC, and I was looking specifically at the number of games in which both teams score at least 35 points. And I was going back through recent years, and what jumped out at me is that the Big Ten has had by far the fewest number of those games of any conference. And so obviously there are some teams in that league that play really good defense, but maybe the final frontier for this is actually the Big Ten. And I don't know if it's going to happen this year, but if you look at what's going on across these conferences, the Big Ten has been the least likely conference to have a game where both teams are scoring at least 5 touchdowns. So it'll be fun to see if that's what we end up getting.
Brad Edwards with us, ESPN Insider College Football and ESPN Game Day, of course. Brad, thanks for jumping on with us this week. Let's hope we have football to talk about next week. And always appreciate your insight, man, and looking forward to a Big Ten kickoff next week. Thanks for jumping on.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
All right, bud.
Looking forward to it.
Take care.
See you guys.
Thank you. It's Brad Edwards with us on Hail Varsity Radio. So in his point with the way things have kind of gone wildfire with COVID in the SEC, he has a valid point about concern for the Big Ten. So you look at the Big Ten right now, either they're going to be looking great for waiting as long as they did with the rapid test, or does this thing also hit the Big Ten?
I mean, the rapid test seems like a game changer right now, because that's what they didn't have for Florida and Texas A&M. They couldn't go test the guys the morning of the game.
Well, and it comes down to accuracy, though. Mm-hmm. And there are some tests are more accurate than others, but if you're getting tested every day, I mean, give me a negative test a couple of days in a row. We'll spend some time on the quarterback race with Jacob Padilla, Husker Hoops. His thoughts next on Hail Varsity.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Big thanks to Brad Edwards. His thoughts on COVID, on Bama, on college football. See, we get Big Ten football here. And what's it going to look like at quarterback for Nebraska? Also, Husker basketball underway, their first practice. We welcome in Jacob Padilla from HailVarsity.com and magazine at Jacob Padilla _ Jacob, what's up, man? Good to talk with you again. How you been?
Hey, it's good. Just went to the store a little bit earlier and almost got blown away when I stepped out the door. Been a little windy today.
As I say, it's a good day to have the wind at your back if you're on the tee box. Not so much if you're going into the wind, man. And really loved your story on Nebraska basketball at HailVarsity.com. Also, your padding the stats column with the quarterback competition. And let's go there, Jacob. You've looked pretty in-depth at the sample size you have with McCaffrey. You've covered and seen Adrian in his 2 years, now heading into year 3 at Nebraska. And what did you take away from Coach Frost yesterday? What have you read into or tried to translate with Super Mario, Verduzco, and Lubick? We'll hear from him tomorrow. But how do you size this race up right now? What's your gut telling you about just how neck and neck it is?
Yeah, I guess my gut is still telling me that Martinez will trot out there for the first snap on October 24th, but just kind of the way they're talking this week in particular, I think that's it's not. I don't feel as good about that prediction as I have basically the entire offseason. And we don't get to see any practice. We have no idea what McCaffrey's looking like. All we have to go off of is what he's done previously, which is the outside of his high school tape. It's the spring game and the 12 passes he threw last year outside of his runs, obviously. He played about 51 snaps as a quarterback. So that's all we've got to go off of right now. And based off of what I saw in those snaps, like I didn't think it would be that close if Martinez was healthy and kind of was able to learn from some of what happened last year and take a step forward. So if McCaffrey has taken a bigger step forward than Martinez has and kind of made it a competition, then I guess it'll be a tougher call for Scott Frost, because obviously Martinez is the guy he brought in here in that first class, kind of his hand-picked quarterback, and he's started 21 games. It's not often a team has a starter coming back who's got 2 years of starting experience under his belt, and he's in a fierce competition and in danger of losing his job. So it'll be interesting to see kind of once we're able to see what the coaches have been seeing, once we get out there and see kind of who takes those snaps and how that guy performs. But right now it's just kind of, I think you can drive yourself crazy thinking about everything they said and trying to parse all their words, and because you never know what exactly the intent is behind anything we get in a public press conference.
Jacob Padilla is with us. Jacob, so let's go here in Columbus. You get Adrian, and let's say it doesn't sound like you're going to have Omar. We don't know how severe the air quote nicks are for Wandale and Alante Brown. Does it make sense to toss the football to McCaffrey or jet sweep him, use him that way against Ohio State, along with a few? We got to come up with a Luke McCaffrey type Wildcat nickname if he's behind center in that situation. But you know what I'm saying? Do you use him at other spots? And Nebraska's really careful to make sure everyone knows McCaffrey's a quarterback. But, man, he's such a good athlete. He can go do things at a lot of different spots on the field. You'd be crazy not to use him.
Well, see, I struggle with that. Obviously, they used him in a couple of trick plays last year and had some success with that, so I could see maybe kind of doing something like that. But he has been working at quarterback. They say he's a quarterback. Just because he's fast, is he really going to provide more value for you as a wide receiver or as kind of a
slash type player?
I just don't know. Like how we see what's happening with Taysom Hill and the Saints right now in the NFL, and kind of the weird thing Sean Payton's got going on there. And it just seems like it doesn't really help the team trying to get too cute with that kind of stuff. I think if he's not if he's not your best quarterback, and he's and you don't have him working at wide receiver, I have a hard time believing that he'd be one of your best options there too. So we hear about how great of an athlete he is, and we have seen his speed, and he's made some really nice plays. But I just don't know that Nebraska's in a place now where that should be super high on your list of priorities, is getting him involved if he hasn't earned a starting job somewhere out there.
Jacob Padilla is with us here on Hail Varsity Radio. And Jacob, when I think back to Luke McCaffrey last year, I still kind of remember him as just this skinny kid who got in a couple series. So what can you say about his physical development this offseason? I know Verduzco talked about improving some hitches in the throwing motion, but just his physical development, what strides has he made there? And how do you think that's going to translate to the field this fall?
Yeah, I guess we'll see out there. I mean, unfortunately, we haven't gotten a chance to see these guys in person, really. We've done a little bit of the Zoom thing, but that's all since the spring. Like, they've got him listed at 200 pounds. He definitely did not look that last year. So I'm sure with all the time they've had to spend away from the field, I'm sure once they kind of got access again, and I'm sure back home too, like he had a chance to keep up his workouts with his brothers and everything back home. So I'm sure he's made physical strides, and I think that'll be big for him in terms of being able to go out there and consistently play. That's one of the things that Martinez certainly had as kind of a leg up on there. Is he was a big, physical, strong dude that could take some hits and keep playing. And McCaffrey, you were kind of worried every time that he took off running, teams went to tackle him. So that's kind of the thing. Sophomore year or redshirt freshman year, you kind of have a full year in the strength and conditioning program to kind of really develop your frame and add the good weight to it. And so hopefully he'll be in a much better position physically than he was a year ago.
Jacob, I want to end football with this. Are you bullish on the offense? Are you thinking it could be mid-30 to upper 30-point producing type offense in the Big Ten, or are you just kind of pumping the brakes and let's wait and see? What's your feel with the offense?
I was a little bullish at certain points this offseason. I thought they had a chance to improve kind of with all the pieces they were adding, the way they were moving some guys around. But kind of the talk about the wide receiver situation, that has me a little bit scared. Anytime that you ask about wide receivers, and nothing against these guys, but when the first 2-3 names that guys are mentioning are walk-ons because those are the guys that have been healthy and consistently played, that's not a great sign. And that's kind of what we've seen the last few years is you haven't had these wideouts outside of, obviously, Spielman and Wan'Dale Robinson, and guys really step up. So if Omar Manning isn't what we thought if he doesn't give them what they thought we're going to get out of them, if Alante Brown isn't out there and hasn't been able to kind of put in enough work to really be a big factor there, if Xavier Betts, if these young guys, because that's the problem, we're excited about the potential of all these guys they brought in, but there's not much experience there. And we saw last year, we saw basically last couple of years, outside of a few key examples, a lot of the young guys that they brought in haven't played right away. And they've had to kind of wait their turn. And so are Alante Brown and Xavier Betts, are those guys ready to make an impact now? If they're not, and you're looking at Cade Warner and Levi Falk and out wide with Wan'Dale in the slot, that's a little bit less dynamic than you were kind of anticipating with Omar Manning and Alante Brown and some of these guys that they've added to the mix here. So it's going to depend on that health and kind of what they've been able to develop there. And then it's going to come back to the offensive line, too. If the moves they've made, if the improvement these guys have gone through individually, if that allows them to not have to rely on the passing game as much, if they can be a better running team, and that's kind of the first and second option, and then you can just make some big throws as tight ends here and there on third down and kind of keep the chains moving that way, get Wan'Dale in space. If you can do that, then they've got a chance, I think, to be solid, but it's going to come down to how much progress that unit has made. And so that was good to hear Matt Lubick call it a strength of the team for sure, if that's the way you're looking at it.
Jacob, a thought on hoops. I've got about 3 minutes here. You get the waiver for McGowan's, and touch on his addition to this lineup. I know you've got 3 guys back with experience. Practice got underway today. You've got a ton of teams coming to Lincoln in the Husker bubble. But how are you feeling here about Nebraska's prospects with the year 2 of Hoiberg?
Yeah, I'm excited to see kind of how this whole picture comes together. And I like a lot of the individual pieces. I like how they theoretically fit on paper. It's just going to be a matter of how effective and efficient can they be in the team setting in the Big Ten. And because we're seeing a lot of different guys coming together from different places, varying levels of experience. So you don't know exactly what the final picture is going to look like, but they do have a chance to be better, to have the pieces that Fred Hoiberg needs for his system to work well. So that's the exciting part. And as for Trey McGowan, Fred Hoiberg talked very highly of him, and that was a big addition for them, especially with Kobe King not ending up at Nebraska. That kind of puts you a little shallow in the backcourt in terms of ball handlers. So adding him to that mix, now you feel really good about your situation there. And the question for me is, how Hoiberg's talked about kind of the work they're putting in on his jump shot, his three-point shot, the consistency of it. How much progress can he make in just a few months on that he's been here? Because he really struggled with efficiency at Pittsburgh, and part of it was the situation. He had zero shooting around him. He was sharing the backcourt with another player with similar strengths and weaknesses, and Xavier Johnson. So it wasn't a great environment for him to succeed. And the fact that he was a double-digit scorer both years kind of shows points to his talent. But shooting under 40% from the field, shooting 31% from three, that's kind of the same stuff that we saw from Nebraska's guards last year. So how much progress can McGowan's make in terms of better decision-making with hopefully better spacing around him and then actually knocking down those shots? If he can be much more effective in those areas, then you can play him next to a guy like Delano Banton and Teddy Allen. You've got a chance to have a lot of playmakers out there on the field and a lot of guys that teams are going to have trouble defending.
Jacob Padilla talking Husker hoops, Husker football at Jacob Padilla _ Jacob, awesome to chat, buddy. Thanks for jumping on today.
Yep, catch up with you guys later.
All righty.
He's in his 30s, but sounds like he was born with a stogie in one hand and a brew in the other.
Now, say my name.
It's Schmitty on Hail Varsity Radio.
I got the body of a taut, preteen Swedish boy.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity Radio, presented by the Nebraska Lottery. Time for a Jock Doc Wednesday. Lincoln Orthopedic Center. Dr. Doug Davis with us. Dr. Doug, good to talk with you again. How are you?
Doing just fine, Chris. Thanks.
All right. Well, a lot of fantasy owners and a lot of Cowboy fans out there sick to their stomach, feeling horrible for Dak Prescott, a gruesome injury Sunday against the Giants. Dr. Doug, let's go through the Dak injury, and this thing's pretty complicated. It looked horrific.
Yeah, so the videos don't lie. When you see things going directions, body parts going directions they're not supposed to go. I mean, it gets kind of gruesome. But reality of it is that they were able to get right after this one and get his surgery taken care of that evening. But what we know is that he had a fracture dislocation of his ankle, and what that means is that the ankle bone itself, the bone that sits between your foot and your leg bone, that ankle bone was moved off to the side from where it's supposed to be. That's the dislocation. The reason that it was able to dislocate is because the two bones that come down and surround the ankle, those would be the two bumps on either side of your ankle, those two bones also broke. And so as those bones broke, that lost the containment for the ankle bone, and it was able to slide off to the side, and that's why you get the really kind of gruesome appearance that you saw in all the videos.
Dr. Doug Davis with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center, a Jock Doc Wednesday, and we're talking Dak Prescott, his fracture and dislocation. So I'm familiar with Alex Smith, and I'm familiar with Teddy Bridgewater, just how horrific their injuries were. With this injury, I mean, I saw Dak getting carted off, and bless his heart, he was leaning on his faith as he was carted off, and I'm interested just the severity. Yes, it's super gruesome, and it's got to be extremely painful. But from a timeline here of just risk of life, where does this kind of compare to those other two injuries I've touched on?
Yeah, so the ankle is a joint that when it fractures and that bone moves off to the side, like we talked about with the dislocation, if there's an advantage, I hate to say it that way, but one advantage to that as opposed to a knee injury is that usually the dislocation is associated with the fractures, whereas in the knee, the dislocation is usually associated with ligament injuries. And so in this situation, being able to repair the fractures, and as we all know, bone can heal anatomically and be lined up exactly perfectly. When that can be done, the outlook is really very good. When you add a bone injury along with a ligament injury, then things can get more complex with that. When you talk about Alex Smith's fracture was really in a completely different area, and just a lot more problems with swelling and soft tissue problems with that, and that's why the complications occurred in Alex Smith's situation because of the soft tissue around it. So I guess what I'm saying is that ankle fracture dislocations can be things where people can come back and function at very high levels. I would not be surprised if he's able to come back and function at the same level that he was playing at before.
Dr. Doug, let's talk about the surgery and what happened with Dak, just the process of going in and cleaning up that mess. And then, a timeline. Dallas and Jerry Jones said yesterday that Dak is still our future. Now, Dak's got leverage taken away from him when it comes to contract stuff, but they aren't running from him as far as the quarterback for Dallas. But a lot of elements to discuss here, specifically his return and then the process to get him out of the hospital.
Yeah, so the surgery is a pretty straightforward deal. The initial thing that you're trying to do and even when they put the air splint on, you're basically trying to just get that dislocation reduced and put back into an alignment. Then from a surgical perspective, it's going in and repairing the bone on either side of the ankle. Typically done with screws only on the inner aspect of the ankle, and then with a plate and screws on the outer aspect of the ankle. So once that is completed, it's about a 6 to 8 week healing process for the bone to heal up. And during that time, especially if there's not much in the way of ligament damage that goes along with this, there can be some ligament damage that goes with this, not as much as in a knee. But that being the case, they're able to, after about 3 or 4 weeks, begin to do some motion with this ankle. And that's going to help him recover much more quickly. It's still going to be, a 4 to 6 month kind of a problem for him. But the potential for return, I think, is good.
Dr. Doug Tavis with us, Lincoln Orthopedic Center at Jock Doc Wednesday. We're talking Dak Prescott. What about lingering effect and mobility? You can get back, you can heal up, but will Dak be the same when it comes to getting out of harm's way and getting outside that pocket? He was so much fun, and hopefully will be fun again to watch on the move.
Well, yeah, I mean, this guy was, I believe he was leading the NFL in terms of passing yardage.
Yeah.
And, the part of that was his ability to scramble to get out of the way, but he was also good in the pocket. And he's going to be able to do those things at a level that still probably puts him, in good shape in the NFL. Whether he's going to be as mobile, there's good surgeons out there, but it's pretty tough to put somebody back the way the good Lord put them together.
Last thought here, Dr. Doug, when it comes to just stability with that ankle and lingering pain, that's the back plant foot for him to get that RPM, to channel it up. Is that a concern?
Yeah, the push-off ability, the first quick step ability to get out of the pocket, those are going to be the places where you're going to most likely see a difference in him, that may take a little bit off of his the depth of his ball. I think in the shorter passing games, he's going to look like not much changed, but you may see a difference in some of the longer throws. The throws, the wide flat throws, those may end up being a little less zip on him because of the push-off.
Dr. Doug Tavis, Lincoln Orthopedic Center on Jock Doc Wednesday. We're talking Dak Prescott. Dr. Doug, thanks for a few minutes today.
You take care, Chris.
Miss us?
Come here, brother. Give me a hug. Bring it in for the real thing.
We're on call for you. Catch the podcast at HailVarsity.com, the ESPN Lincoln app, or download them on iTunes.
Saddle up, partner.
Back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time, busy day today. Good stuff from Jacob Padilla, Mike Babcock, phenomenal. Brad Edwards, Mike Schuart, and thanks to Dr. Doug on the make that Dak Prescott injury. So I was looking at Tuesday Night Football last night. Tennessee was all over it, and the Derrick Henry stiff arm seen around the world. The best meme I saw for that was the front of Fresh Prince of Bel-Air's home, where Jazz would get thrown out, always by Uncle Phil. And they had... They had the unfortunate party, the defensive back, who was great with Washington. Help me out. The defensive back for the Derrick Henry just abused. Free agent guy, made a lot of money, Carolina. Now he's not in Carolina anymore. I blanked on it. I should have written his name down. We all saw Derrick Henry do bad things to that little corner.
Josh Norman?
Josh Norman. And Norman's a really good corner. But that's just freight train and U-Haul, Reminder about buckling up. 1,500 crashes each year in Nebraska involving an impaired driver. Driving drunk, buzzed, or high. Never acceptable. Law enforcement officers working every day to stop before more people are killed or injured. If you are going to drive and you do have to drive, don't drink. And if you do drink, get that designated driver or get a ride share. DUIs cost more than you think. Brought to you by the Nebraska Department of Highway Safety Office. So tomorrow we are live at Seacrest Field ahead of Gretna, Lincoln Southeast. Gary Barnett is golfing. So we'll kick the show off with Barney before he tees off. Brandon Vogel's going to be with us. Coach Catula of Southeast is locked in. Bill Bender from the Sporting News will be with us. Also hear from longtime Nebraska assistant George Darlington, Coach Darlington, and then Gretna Coach Kale with us. So we are loaded up tomorrow. Friday, happy hour with Hail Varsity at Wilderness Ridge, 4 to 6. Me and Shuey going to be doing the show. We have another date scheduled in November at Wilderness, which is just awesome. Our old boy Jay Moore is going to be with us there. Jay's out of town Friday, and Shuey's so fun to sit in with like we did in August. So plenty of football thoughts. And Elijah's glaring at me because he is back here on Friday. But you're going to be in doing scoreboards and all that good stuff tomorrow night. So I will talk to you at some point tomorrow night.
I really fast have one last thought on this Derrick Henry, Josh Norman thing. I know you're a history guy. So the tweet I saw is from Roger Sherman of The Ringer. And he said, I haven't seen a Henry conquer a Norman like this since King Henry V invaded the north of France in 1415.
Well, of course, and I'm sure there was an ode to it on Game of Thrones, right, with the invasion. Wow. Decisions. What are you doing for dinner tonight? Because I've been roped into taking my wife out for dinner a second night in a row.
I was thinking mac and cheese and hot dogs.
Right? Together?
Oh, of course. You cut up the hot dog, put it in the mac and cheese.
Are you an Oscar Mayer guy? Do you go with brats? Do you like Hebrew National? I mean, what's your take on dogs?
I'm a Nebraska kid, so I'm going Fairbury. Are you kidding me?
I get it, and I love you got to go Tommy Boy Fairberries.
Oh, the fat ones. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the big fat ones. Good enough. Tomorrow, Seacrest ahead of Southeast Gretna. Busy day. Thanks for tuning in to Hail Varsity. Find the podcast on Spotify.